Alrighty, so here it is. We're going to get started with the first of the Achieving Higher Profit Revenue sessions. I'm really excited. I'm Wendy Harrington with Tap This Group, and I'm here with Dara Sandow-Vandel. Make sure I pronounce that correctly. Is that right?
It's close enough. Dara Sandow-Vandel. Yep.
Of Bool. And I'm really excited to have her be our first conversation because she's hitting on a topic that a lot of small businesses don't really drill down into, and I feel like it would be just a really good topic for people to think about. And so anyway, that's how we're going to get started. So I met Dara. Oopsie, sorry. Let me do this. Okay. I met Dara. That way, Betsy, you don't have to feel like you're, on candid camera the entire time. Through a group on LinkedIn called CRM. And CRM here in the US, and I'll explain why I'm saying that in a little bit, generally stands for Customer Relationship Management. And this group, of course, is global, so there are some slight differences out there in what that CRM term means. And Dara had posted something, I'm going to read it to you because it was interesting to me. That's how we got to know each other. That said, making new users your top priority is asking your existing ones to migrate to the competition. And this was just, it so hit home for me because, I'm all about building relationships with clients, helping my clients do a better job of that, identify who's going to be their ideal customer, and then really build their business around what those needs are. And you see all the time companies that are, just putting out their best deals, their great specials, everything's targeting the person who has nothing to do with their company, and oftentimes leaving the people who are in their current client base feeling like they've been abandoned or like they don't really count quite as much. And so anyway, we got our conversation started there, and she does such interesting work and slightly differently than what I've seen anybody do here, particularly for the small business person, even the micro business, that felt like it would be really good to have a chat with her. So with that said, Dara, why don't you just give us a little bit of an overview of your business and kind of your what it is that you do for people?
Sure. My company is called Bool, which in Hebrew means bullseye. So I'm located in Israel, and what my company does is basically look at the data side of small businesses. We help small businesses grow through customer retention. So it's a little bit different than customer relationship management. Rather, we work to retain clients. And the way that we do that is by understanding their data and their customer behavior. That's the main thing. Yeah. And once we understand the overall data and customer behavior, we're able to help update websites, come up with content strategies, build CRM strategies, build the correct reports that clients need to see so that they'll be able to understand how long they can expect their clients to stay with them, which KPIs they should apply to different areas of their business in order to know if they're growing, if they're sustainable, or if they're positioned correctly in their industry.
Mm-hmm. All really important questions that we tend to run on doing our business without necessarily stopping to ask those questions. So having somebody who can help walk you through that and set up the systems as well to make that happen is just huge. So I guess you can tell a little bit more about how you, I guess where the first place is where people seem to not get it about CRM, right? What is it what's the thing that is their pain point, and they just haven't really wrapped their hands around the whole CRM idea?
Oftentimes people associate customer retention management with sending out emails and SMSs and sales, and not looking into understanding exactly how the user's interacting necessarily with your product, if it's a product or your service. And it doesn't matter if you have a bakery or if you have a SaaS product, or you have a mobile application. It's really all the same. It's more about understanding what your customer is returning for. Mm-hmm. So if they're returning because you have a beautiful smile, then you figure out that you need to place that beautiful smile in strategic locations. If it's they're returning because they like a certain feature in your product, we need to understand if that feature is essentially making you money. They might be returning, but then at the end of the day, they may not be contributing to the growth of your business. So these are the different things that we're looking at, as well as understanding which desirable actions users are completing in order to help you sustain your growth as well as your revenue, I guess you could say.
Mm.
And when I look at desirable actions, the way that I define it is any action that a user or customer is completing that benefits you financially.
Makes sense. It sounds like some of what you may be looking at then is it survey information or something like that, or is it primarily being pulled from sales data and other kinds of things like clicks on a website or clicks within an email or something like that?
Well, the first thing that's a very good question. The first thing that I like to do is to build a funnel. So if you're building a funnel for a retail person, for a retail entity, let's say, then your funnel is going to start from the point that the person is on the street. Mm. If you're building it for an online entity, then it's from the very first banner ad. And then what I do is I break down the steps that it takes until the user completes the sale or the purchase. Mm-hmm. And then, so we'll take into consideration an online entity, since we're doing an online interview, right? So first you get to the banner ad, and then from the banner ad, you'll probably get to a landing page. And then from there, you're either going to go from registration or to a click on something within the website. And at some point, though, you have to capture data. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I marker all these different things. And then once they're inside, I go ahead and I'll take a look at where they were clicking on the website, which kind of, if there are calls, there should be calls to action. So which calls to action they're clicking on, how many pages they're going through, how long their sessions are, that sort of information. And it involves a lot of A/B testing. Mm-hmm. The reason I prefer not to do surveys is because usually the people that are interested in answering surveys are already interested in your product or service to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And it seems skewed in your favor from the get-go. So I prefer to work on I prefer to work on data, because the data is not going to lie to me. And I can start running A/B tests. And when I run the A/B tests, then what I can see is the variations in minute detail as to how user behavior is changing. So if I move a form, let's say I need to capture an email information. So if I move the form to the top of the page and it performs better than when there was no form at all, then I understand that users are looking for more information out of me. Mm-hmm. And then in the next step, when I start sending out the emails, then I'm going to take a look at what kind of emails my users are interacting with. So is it more on the informational side? Is it more on the sales side? That sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And for those that don't know what A/B tests are, you may have got a little bit from there, but imagine that you have set up some kind of an ad, or you put out a social media post and someone clicks through to a landing page, right? So just not necessarily your full website, but a single web page. When you set that web page up, you can, in most services, you can create two versions that will serve up alternately, so that you get equal numbers of each one for all the people that come. And ideally, you really want to just be testing one single factor. So it's either, as she said, one position on the page, or one different line in the call to action, or one different offer, or one different color, whatever the detail is. Don't change a bunch of them, because like any kind of scientific test, you won't know which was the actual factor. So anything I missed there, anything you want to add to that, or other examples?
You got it perfect. You summed it up perfectly. I think you took my very awkward explanation put a bow on it.
No. And some systems it's a little easier than others, but you can do this through email. You can do this through the ads that you serve up too. You'll see that in pay-per-click ads or other things like that. But Well, so that's good. So then you're pulling in that data that's coming from people's actual activity. So there's no guesswork and no favoritism coming from, different people who've decided to fill out your survey. Um, when you think about those small businesses that you work with or those that you talk to, and you're seeing how they make decisions, what are the customer insight challenges that they are facing right now that you see?
I think that a lot of it is that they apply their own opinion too often to what the customer thinks.
Mm.
So they'll decide to build, let's say they're building their website for the first time. And let's pretend that their website is for glasses, let's say. I like your glasses, so that's... So their website is for glasses, and they're trying to attract professionals at about 40 plus, and they want something that's classic, but a unique style. And the person who's building the website happens to be, I don't know, 25, and they like to wear neon colors, and they want, I don't know, they listen to heavy metal music. But the point is they're completely different than the demographic that they're trying to sell to. What you'll often find is that they'll say to themselves, well, I don't like the site. So if I don't like the site, my customer is not going to like it. Whereas somebody like me will come with the approach of, I don't care if I like the site, it's not for me. And oftentimes when we apply our own bias to customer insights, we end up shooting ourselves in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those scenarios where if you're talking about new customers, so I won't send out a survey, but if I'm talking about existing customers, this is a perfect example of sending out a survey, because you just ask them simply, what is it would you like to see?
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you. And then you just give them what it is that they want to see. And lo and behold, it works.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I find this a lot when with somebody starting up a new program that they haven't done before, and sometimes you can ask people, and you'll get a certain amount of the way, and then like you said, there's also now roll in the actual information. So a combination of insight and data and survey input really gives you the biggest bang, or and that'll get you there. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think another aspect for small businesses, if they're getting started, is the idea that they tend to concentrate really hard on acquiring as many new users as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And they forget that their clientele, their base, is actually growing very quickly if that's what they're doing. So they still need to put quite a bit of effort of keeping their already registered or already their current clients, let's call it, or their current customers happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we look at how growth works, and if we look at how exponential growth works, it starts off really slowly in the beginning, right? It starts off something like this, and then all of a sudden it just takes off like a rocket. It works something similarly to if you look at compound interest in finance.
Good point.
And this is something that I feel that if more small businesses paid attention to, that if each client got very good service, or at least equal service to the other client, they'll find that their retention rate will be higher.
Mm-hmm.
And in a it won't take too long before they start seeing nice growth, or at least sustainability.
Yeah, no, that's good. You just made me think that I think I'll have to go back and look at I think it's called the 4 love languages, right? It looks at what it is, sometimes what we think we're giving out that is either great service or great love or great care or whatever. It doesn't necessarily match what our audience needs. So maybe another thing will be to figure out how to weave that into the mix, as we define what our real relationship building needs are. Because we may be delivering stuff sometimes that's based on what we think they need. We're not really listening to what it is that they think they need. But, so it's this interesting thought.
It is an interesting thought, and you can actually do it through the data.
There you go.
I worked at a company that today is called Perion, but years and years ago it was called Incredimail. And the idea of IncrediMail at the time was that it was a downloadable suite for email. And it was one of the first ones where you had emoticons and stuff like that that would come and say, you have mail. You know, you'd have like some sort of character that would crawl out onto the screen. In any case, so one of the things that I was doing product marketing there. And what I had to figure out is I was selling email backgrounds. And that's not an easy thing to sell, especially when Gmail already existed and Hotmail and so on. So this was already a dying product. And I had to figure out what the emotional connection was between the email backgrounds and the actual purchase. And I failed for 6 months because I said, oh, Mother's Day. So you need Mother's Day backgrounds, right? And for each and every holiday that came up, for any Hallmark holiday, right? I would create these email background packages and I would sell them. And I realized why I was failing. I had this aha moment, as they call it, right? So I said, the reason it's failing is because I'm creating content that the sender is sending, but it's irrelevant to the user. So on Mother's Day, I'm creating like best mom backgrounds. But that didn't make sense because the age group was between 45 to 65 or something like that. So they were the moms.
Right.
So that's what they needed to be receiving, not what they needed to be sending. So I thought to myself, okay. So then I said, I'm going to run a test. And I very foolishly told everybody in the company that I was going to run this test. And I said, I have an idea. And I decided I was going to pick something that didn't have, that the criteria was this: it was not allowed to be controversial. It couldn't be religious. And it couldn't be something that somebody could get offended of in any kind of way. And it couldn't be something that was going to, but it had to elicit an emotional response. So that was my criteria. So I'm looking through the calendar of all the holidays and everything else. I said, you know what? Earth Day. That's what it's going to be. Earth Day. It's easy. It's fine.
Right. Most people like Earth.
Yep, it's not offensive because I thought maybe AIDS or cancer, and I thought, no, that's associated with death. I don't want it. Earth Day, it's safe. So then I went ahead and I said, okay, Earth Day. Nobody wants to see garbage on their email backgrounds or dirt or whatever it is. So what does everybody like? So I decided animals.
Perfect.
So then I said, okay, but I only want the cute and fuzzy ones because they're also not controversial, right? So I said, fine. So then I went ahead and I did a search for the cute fuzzy animals for each continent. And then from there, I made a list of the cute and fuzzy animals and I gave it to the animators and I gave it to the artists, and they made some absolutely incredible work. They really did. They gave me stuff that was beyond what I could have expected. And I said, okay, now I need a landing page. I built a landing page for this Earth Day. And I went in and I built a recommendation engine. So if you purchase the email package of North America, I was going to recommend, I don't know, Australia or something because they both had bears and so on. And I sold it for under $5. Then the other thing I said was, I'm also going to donate a certain percentage to the World Wildlife Fund.
That's cool.
Because I figured, okay, you know, animals, let's go. But I want to target the heartstrings, right? It's terrible, but that's what I did. And sure enough, that month we made 3 times more revenue than the company had ever seen. Not only for that month, but for other months. And then I understood what the emotional connection was, and then I was able to recreate it. And this is something that if you look at the data and if you look at what's downloaded and if you look at the user behavior and if you pay attention to the age groups of who your clients are and what it is that you're trying to sell to them, it doesn't always have to be such a manipulative approach. Please don't misunderstand me. And then you couple that with sales tactics. For instance, you could buy one package for $4.95, or you could buy the entire set, which was 5 packages for, I sold it for $15 or $14.95. So all of a sudden, if you like 3 of them, you may as well have taken them all.
Right. Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, like that was a win-win scenario. And that's really what all of the customer relationship building and customer retention things should be, is figuring out what that win-win is going to be. Like the people will say, people don't mind a business making money, but they want it to be, in your case, it was probably a win-win-win, since you included the animal donation as well, so you had a little bit of extra. And it made me think that, as you're looking at how to define pricing and how to look at your customers, when we've talked before, customer lifetime value was something that you were also helping your clients get their arms around a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. My background comes mainly from the gaming industry. So the gaming industry works, LTV or lifetime value, as you mentioned, is a very central KPI in the gaming industry. And basically what it means is how much you have to pay for the user versus how much you make out of the user until they leave you. And if you're ROI positive, fantastic. That's the goal. I look at it a little bit differently because I'm not on an acquisition team, or I think in the US you call it inbound marketing. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So because I'm less interested in inbound marketing, and more interested in retention. So I prefer to look at a different matrix, which would be user longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do there is I say this: the longer you keep the user, the longer you keep a paying user, right? Mm-hmm. The longer you keep a paying user, the higher the LTV is going to go up in any case. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's in my interest to go ahead and to keep the user for as long as possible, keep them as happy as possible. And my company or the company that I'm working with is going to make a lot more money. Mm-hmm. Because when you work with LTV, usually what you get in return is the KPI of a certain amount of a dollar value. Mm-hmm. Fine. So you can manipulate this number very simply. If the goal is to get to LTV of 500, no problem. Just delete everybody from your database that's hurting your average, and there you go. You've met your goal. It's easy.
Yeah, not very effective, but it works, right?
Yeah, if you're working inside a company, that's a way to get it done. Yeah. Whereas if you work with user longevity, your numbers are not going to lie to you. And what's going to happen is that you find yourself working in such a way that your user that's worth $5 is just as valuable to you as your user who's spending $10,000, $1 million.
It's over time, sure. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing what the likely life length is, or life cycle is, can help you with planning. It can help you see with new product development if there are new problems that have come up once people get to a certain point, or is it just kind of repeat work. One of the people that we're going to be talking to in a few weeks is Joe Matz of Eagle Business Services, and he actually helps people learn about different subscription models that might work for different types of businesses. So that'll be kind of an interesting thing coming up too. But is customer lifetime value something that you find is a new concept to the people that you work with, or do they kind of have some sense of it and you're sort of reintroducing them with this new definition?
If they come from the online field, they tend to have familiarity with LTV. If they don't, then they don't have a sense of it at all. Mm. And it's usually not something that I'll bring up. What I'll do is I'll introduce a concept. I won't give them the acronym, because I find that when I work with small businesses, if I start throwing acronyms at them, then it's almost as though I'm talking from an ivory tower, and I put a barrier between us. Yeah. So I try not to, in a conversation like this, I don't have a problem with it. It's expected, I guess, more or less, that I'll know these things. But when I speak face-to-face with a potential client, usually I'll talk to them more about user longevity and explain that area to them so that they don't become obsessed with the idea of, one client is spending half of what another client is, so now I only should focus on the high spending client, when in effect it can do all sorts of damage to them.
Right. I guess sometimes it's helpful if it matches with sort of the core purpose of the company, or something like that. Sometimes it can be useful. We end up, if people in the service business, sometimes the challenge is, do I does it take me so much energy, so much cycling to nurture this one kind of client one-on-one, or should I maybe provide something that's I can do the same type of work to multiple people at once, right? So you have people coming up with online courses or things like that as a way to take the same amount of work that they do, be able to deliver value, and to more people, or people who are doing books might, it's the same kind of logic, but to know the data that you have and be able to decide based on that what the right solution is for you, that's really what makes the big difference. Again, matching the data with other information that you have is just so important, no matter what.
You brought up a very good point, because although LTV is less relevant to, say, companies who are offering once you've actually acquired the user.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who's working on an existing database, LTV is not really relevant to them. However, your point is, it's a very good point when you're talking about the examples that you gave for books and for looking to expand into different groups, but it also works very well for when you look at inbound marketing.
Mm-hmm.
LTV is perfect. If you take LTV and you match it with ROI
mm-hmm.
For inbound marketing and for sales as well, this is exactly where it should be applied. Because once they know how much it's costing, like you said, once you know how much it's costing to acquire that user and how long they're going to be with you, then you can work together with either the customer retention team or with the BI team in order to figure out, okay, what's the customer profile I need to look for? And then you can create new benchmarks.
Right. Yeah. And for some of the smaller businesses, of course, your team is you putting on this hat, and then this, and then this. And that's the advantage of having people like you, or me, or many of the other folks who are out in our world, just helping to give that different perspective, so that you don't have to know everything, you don't have to be able to do it all at once. So one of the things that I feel like is a challenge, and this is true even for me, even though I know what to do, it is really taking the time to get the data capture set up properly, and then taking the time to analyze it. And I know that you have a little bit of a unique product, or a different way of doing that. Can you talk a little bit about maybe ways that we can move forward with data capture and analytics that is not so burdensome and so overwhelming to people, I guess?
Sure. When I started out in online, it was actually one of my major concerns was how am I going to understand the data? How am I going to collect the data? What am I going to do? So the first thing that I did once I understood it, and how I like to explain it, is I like to simplify it. Mm-hmm. So essentially, if you look at a big crowd of people that's walking in the street and you want them to come into your store, so you're going to post a sign outside of your store, come on in, right?
Come here.
Exactly. Maybe with lights or an arrow, whatever. And those that come in the store, what you do is you put a sticker on them. And say somebody who buys one product in a certain price point gets an orange sticker. Somebody else who buys a different product in a different price point will get a red sticker, a blue sticker, and so on, right? So you understand more or less what everybody that you want to put into a category, into a high-level category, gets a different color sticker. This is the same thing when you look at data for capturing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so instead of necessarily giving them a sticker, what you might do is you might use Google Analytics. And Google Analytics has a free tool that you can use to build UTM codes. I think in the States you say UTM tags. Mm-hmm. So you can use that. And then once you have that, somebody like me comes along, and then I extract the data and I put it into Excel. I don't personally care for using fancy tools and expensive tools for small businesses. because it puts a lot of pressure on them to be able to afford the tool. It's just more overhead. So generally speaking, as long as you're doing things carefully, for instance, if you're running a phone campaign, you can go ahead and you can buy phone numbers and from a certain from companies that obviously that sell them, and give out unique phone numbers for whatever promotion you're doing. So if you're selling shoes for women, you give out phone number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and shoes for men, you're going to do 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And then from there, you're going to know exactly which campaign is working better for you, because you can see how many calls you're getting from each place, and it didn't cost you very much money. Other things that people can do, if you have, I don't know, say like a bowling alley, right? If that's your thing, then you can use different wristbands, and you have a maximum number of wristbands at the beginning of the day, count the wristbands at the end of the day, and you already know how many people came into you through the day because you have the point of sale. But then you can see, according to group, how many people purchased this package versus that package, and so on. And then you just input it into a very simple spreadsheet, and you can send that off to somebody, or you can come to somebody like me or like you who can build an Excel template, and it will do all of the different calculations that it needs to do for you. And you'll know exactly how your campaign performed.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've worked on with a client is building, I think that this is what you wanted me to talk about as well, correct me if I'm wrong, is we built a CRM system in Excel. It's an unusual tool. You have a database in one file, and in the other file, you have an actual CRM system. You can input the user's name and all of their data the same way that you normally would. And the Excel file understands how to read it. And from there, we know how to generate reports that can be automatic for you and sent out to you, and you can know how your company is performing. Yeah. And the reason I came up with that tool was because I was so frustrated with the online options where you either have to pay a lot of money, or you're in some sort of freemium subscription where essentially the small business has no idea what it is that they need, or they know exactly what it is that they need, but they end up spending more money than they have to because the features are sort of placed in such a way that you're forced to go into the upsell.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that small businesses have enough to pay for. They have enough difficulty without having to put up with that. And so the idea behind this CRM tool is that this will get you started pretty cheap. Let's be honest, it'll get you started for really cheap. It sits on your computer, and it's already an existing database. So when you're ready to grow, all you do is you give whatever company you decide to work with that existing database, they upload it for you, and then you don't have that pain point, that integration pain point, be as harsh as it would be otherwise.
Yeah, which is just brilliant. And it's using a platform that most people have some familiarity with. So there's no learning curve, and it's in many instances much more customized, so that people are capturing what they need to capture, and probably you're spotting things that they might not even know that would be beneficial to capture. So I think that's just a huge plus. So
well, it's one of those things that I wanted to make sure that for now we fully customize it. But later on, we would give instructions to the client how they can customize it themselves, and then suggest to them, if you have ABC company, you should have these accompanying reports. If you have a retail company, you should have this. If you have an online company, you should have that. If you have, I don't know, whatever it is, a bakery, or what's also retail, right? It's essentially retail or online.
Yeah, service versus a product.
Service.
Something. Yeah.
Exactly. But those reports we could already suggest which reports you should be looking at. And those reports are built in such a way that it's very clear to see where the user's profiting, exactly what's working and what's not working. Designed for somebody who hasn't taken a marketing degree, who doesn't have the time to spend 20 minutes trying to understand a report.
Right. Yep.
Because at the end of the day, go ahead.
Just get the news you need.
Yeah, because it's really a problem. I mean, even if you look at professionals, if we look at how professionals are expected to read reports, if I can't see my bottom line within the first few seconds, as far as I'm concerned, the report is not good enough.
Mm.
If I want to drill down to understand the nitty-gritty, that's fine. But I should understand the summary of the report fairly immediately.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's when it becomes workable, usable. So, just thinking if there were any other questions that I had for you. I guess what are the top questions that you would want to make sure a business thought about before they started developing their CRM solution?
That's a very good question. I would ask them, what's your long-term plan? Oftentimes businesses will start off, if you look at a fashion brand, they'll specialize in, say, skirts or t-shirts, and then they branch out to different things. Usually the person will know that they want to branch out. If we look at MAC Cosmetics, for instance, way back in the day, they specialized in lipstick, and it was absolutely brilliant. Their ads just showed these lips so that when you said MAC, you associated it with lipstick, right? And later on, they metamorphosized into a company that was all around makeup, until you look at their branding strategy today, where they're supposed to be socially conscious and all inclusive and everything else. Now, at the beginning, they had an idea as to where they wanted to go. So I like to ask companies, what's your utopia?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you want to get to? Because then from there, I can understand the data that they need to capture, and how to build their database and what kind of reports they're looking for. And if they ask me for KPIs, I can already tell them and help them determine which KPIs are going to be successful for them, as well as which areas of the business they should concentrate on, and where they should invest.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I like to ask them. Another thing I like to ask them is, how big do you really want to be? If somebody wants to stay a mom and pop shop, why not? If you want to have just a small store that sells soap or candles, or you want to be a butcher, or I don't know, you want to be a landscaper in the area, whatever it is that you want to be, but you want to keep it profitable to sustain your lifestyle, perfectly legitimate.
Yep.
But it's a completely different set of tools to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, having that sense of both what it is that you're going to start with and then where you want to go, is huge. There's a need to start with a particular focus, for sure, because that people will only remember so much, right? So you start with that one thing, and then you can grow from there. Being able to lay the foundation when you first start, based on where you're going to go, definitely will save you in the long run. Though, I mean, of course, people will shift their gears, and especially in a world like we're in now, pivoting. But it's a starting point. So that's terrific. Let me see if Betsy has any questions.
In the meantime, I'm just going to turn on my lamp.
Nope. Betsy, I have unmuted you. Do you have any questions?
I don't, but thank you.
Okay, that's cool.
What a wonderful perspective that I would never have thought to poke around in. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Dara.
Good.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
That's great. Dara, is there anything that you would like to add?
I don't think so. I think you've covered things quite beautifully. Your questions are very poignant.
Oh, thanks. Well, you are a great person to have a conversation with about this. I could probably go on for a really lot longer, but in the interest of everybody else's day and time, we will be posting this out into the ether. And if you have any questions, you'll be able to add comments to the chat, and of course reach out to Dara and ask her anything that you like. I'm sure on this topic she'd be happy to share her ideas with you. So that is it for today. We'll have another one of these certainly in 2 weeks, and then trying to do something about every 2 weeks as an interview, and then in the intermittent days, another little bit of information that is actionable to help people with their higher profit revenue. That's it. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm
Thank
going to
you.
stop recording now.